Hello and welcome to Moments in History. I'm Linda Shenton-Matchett, author, speaker, and history geek. While researching my stories, I unearthed tons of intriguing historical information that does not end up in my books. So I've created this channel so I can share these tidbits with you. I appreciate you stopping by to watch. Do you know about the American Library in Paris? Neither did I until recently. This impressive organization is the result of efforts by the American Library Association. In 1917, as the United States joined the war raging in Europe, U.S. libraries shipped more than 2 million books to U.S. Armed Forces personnel through the Library War Service. The following year, the organization installed its central library at 10 Rue de Liesse. By 1920, the organization had incorporated under the laws of Delaware and was operating as a non-profit cultural association. The library's charter is to bring the best of American literature, culture, and library science to readers in France, and every book in its collection has the library's motto on its book plates: Aetrum post bellum ex libris lux, or after the darkness of war, the light of books. With a collection of 25,000 volumes and 115 periodicals, the library has grown into the largest English-language lending library on the European continent. The leadership of the early library was composed of a small group of American expatriates, notably Charles Seeger, brother of the young American poet Alan Seeger, who wrote I Have a Rendezvous with Death and died in action in 1916, and father of folk singer Pete Seeger. In fact, the library's founding was supported in part with an initial gift of 50,000 francs derived from the royalties of Alan Seeger's books, poems, letters, and diaries in 1916 and 1917. Among the first trustees of the library was the expatriate American novelist Edith Wharton. Ernest Hemingway and Gertrude Stein, early patrons of the library, contribute articles to the library's periodical Ex Libris, which is still published today as a quarterly newsletter. Thornton Wilder and Archibald MacLeish borrowed their books, and Stephen Vincent Benet wrote John Brown's Body in 1928 at the library. The library's continuing role as a bridge between the United States and France was apparent at the beginning. French President Raymond Poincaré, along with French military leaders such as Joffre, Foch, and Lyautey, were present when the library was formally inaugurated. An early member of the board was American Clara Longworth de Chambrun, whose husband was a French general and direct descendant of Marquis of Lafayette. The library quickly became a vital hub of reference services and educational outreach. And as noted in an operational report from 1923, within just 3 years of its existence, the library's reference room was visited by 35,000 users, 35% of whom were Americans, 33% French, 16% English, and 16% other nationalities. A succession of talented American librarians directed the library through the difficult years of the Depression, when the first evening author programs drew such French literary luminaries as André Gide, André Marat, Princess Bonaparte, and Colette for readings. Financial difficulties ultimately drove the library to new premises on the Rue de Terran in 1936. The outbreak of World War II and the subsequent German occupation of France made it difficult for the library to continue to provide its services to the population of Paris, especially to French Jews. In spite of the difficult times, the library did not ultimately close its doors. 3 days after war was declared, head librarian Dorothy M. Reeder formed the Soldiers' Service, which shipped books to Czechoslovakia, English, and French service members, as well as to the French Foreign Legion. Under her leadership, and later through the efforts of the Comtesse, the library remained active in various capacities throughout the war. When Nazi aggression grew, the library staff prepared the building from potential attack, pasting the doors and windows with paper to fortify the glass in case of bombing, and stocked up on gas masks. In spite of the mounting fear in the city, Ms. Reeder asserted there was never a thought that we should close. Paying subscriptions continued even as the conflict escalated, and Americans who had fled Paris with library books in their possession wrote back promising to return the books safely upon their own return. In a decision that harkened back to the library's origins in the First World War, Reader launched the Soldiers' Service, providing books to British and French troops. Soldiers wrote back to the library grateful for the reading material. In February of 1940, just 5 months after the service was launched, the Paris-based Herald Tribune reported that 12,000 books had been distributed, having been donated by individuals, organizations, and libraries in response to the public appeals. In the spring of 1940, the war reached Paris in the form of the Blitzkrieg. At that point, the library staff decided to leave the city for their safety, with the exception of head librarian Dorothy Reader. Though the library was closed to the public, she continued to welcome patrons to the library when they rang and allowed them to check out books. In September, the library was allowed to reopen in the afternoons. At this time, Dr. Hermann Fuchs, German library protector and former director of the Berlin Library, visited the American Library in Paris. While his visit was at first a shock to Reader, they recognized each other from pre-war international library conferences, and he assured her that the library would continue to be allowed to operate, although it would be bound by the same rules as the Bibliothèque Nationale of France. One of the most troubling of these rules was the forced exclusion of Jews from the library. However, this did not stop the library from providing these patrons with books. Reader and her staff members, as well as the Comtesse, hand-delivered books to Jews who were barred from entering the library. In fact, one staff member was shot by the Gestapo, fortunately not fatally, when he failed to raise his hands quickly enough during a surprise inspection. When Reader was sent home for her safety at the end of 1941, the Comtesse rose to the occasion and led the library. In a classic occupation paradox, the happenstance of her son's marriage to the daughter of the Vichy Prime Minister Pierre Laval and her family's other social and business connections ensured the library a friend in high places. That, along with the pre-war esteem of the German library protector for Dorothy Reader and the library, granted the institution a near-exclusive right to keep its doors open and its collections largely uncensored throughout the war. A French diplomat later said the library had been to occupied Paris an open window on the free world. The library prospered again in the post-war era as the United States took on a new role in the world, and the expatriate community in Paris experienced regeneration. A new wave of American writers came to Paris and to the library. Irwin Shaw, James Jones, Mary McCarthy, Art Buchwald, Richard Wright, and Samuel Beckett were active members during a heady period of growth and expansion. During the early Cold War years, American government funds made possible the establishment of a dozen provincial branches of the American Library in Paris, even one in the Latin Quarter. The library moved to the Champs-Élysées in 1952, and it was at that address that director Ian Forbes Fraser barred the door to a high-profile visit from Roy Cohn and David Schein, Senator Joseph McCarthy's notorious anti-communist investigators who were touring Europe in search of red books in American libraries. The library purchased its current premises 2 blocks from the Eiffel Tower in 1964. The branch libraries ended their connections to the library in the 1990s, and 3 survive under new local partnerships. By the time of its 75th anniversary in 1995, the library's membership had grown to 2,000. The premises were renovated in the late 1990s and again in 2011 and 2013, creating an enclosed conference space, an expanded reading room, a refurbished children's library, a teen mezzanine, and new restrooms. In 2016, the library was transformed by a major renovation that included creating a new facade, new study spaces on the mezzanine and lower levels, a soundproofed reading room, and a members' lounge. In 2018, membership was reported at 4,224. The library hosts free evening presentations by authors, scholars, journalists, and other public figures for children, teens, and adults. The Young Authors Fiction Festival, established in 2001, is held annually in the spring and open to all students ages 5 to 18 in the Greater Paris area who write in English. The Visiting Fellowship was established in 2013 to nurture and sustain cross-cultural intellectual discourse, and a writer-in-resident position was also created in 2018 for a visiting writer selected by the library. The library continues to grow and develop as it meets the needs of its patrons. I hope you've enjoyed today's moment in history. If you want to learn even more history, please stop by my blog, which can be found on my website at www.lindashentonmatchett.com. And please consider subscribing to my channel and click the bell icon to receive notifications of new episodes that are generally released on the second and fourth Fridays of each month. And be sure to stay tuned for exciting news at the end of my next video about something I have in the works for January. Thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day.